Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Fireside Chat series, Tech Leaders in Focus, brought to you by Scalable Leaders. Today, we're talking to Virginia Murdoch about leadership, her journey, mistakes, and especially how to reflect and get better self-awareness as a leader. But before we go there, I want to do an Australian custom and start with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're all on, and I would like to pay my respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. Now, what is this series about, and what can you expect from the next hour? Over the last few years, there's been a realization that transitioning into leadership roles in tech is harder than, say, in marketing and sales and HR, etc., and especially in tech companies that are growing and innovating incredibly fast. It's just down to the fact that our leadership skills, where we are with them as individual contributors, and where we need to be as a leader, just don't evolve as fast because we don't spend as much time honing our interpersonal leadership skills as other functions, and instead we focus on complex and abstract problem solving. And so at Scalable Leaders, we focus on giving people that extra support system to unlock their potential, fast-track growth, and avoid the burnout. So people don't feel so overwhelmed and like they're constantly firefighting. It's a support system that's designed to be the fastest way for leaders in tech to level up. In this Fireside Chat series, we are talking with established leaders in our tech ecosystem. And we want to demystify what the journey as a leader looks like, even into leadership, shine a light on common mistakes, and understand how leaders are managing the demands of their roles today. Whether you're with us live or catching up later, do put your questions into the chat and we'll get around to them. Please start doing so at the very beginning of the question. We'll just move into Q&A sort of towards the end, but at least we've got a bank of questions to go off. Now, I welcome Virginia to the digital stage. Welcome, Virginia. Glad for you to be here. Tell us a little bit about what your current role is and what it means on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So I am head of product at EQL, which is a small early stage startup based in Melbourne. And we do, our tagline is commerce built for passion. We basically help retailers and brands launch very high demand scarce products to market, and there's I won't go into much detail about what that entails, but it's a really fun and interesting kind of corner of e-commerce. And so I'm head of product. It's quite rare to be head of product in a company that is a startup. Usually one of the founders takes that role, but in this case, the founders, there's not a product person in the founding group. So it was a really great opportunity for me to take that leadership role in a small and growing company. It's about 50 people. And so I and the head of engineering basically look after our 4 product teams, and then I work with the leadership team on kind of business strategy and growth and that kind of stuff. And because of my history in HR tech at Culture Amp, I also get pretty involved in kind of thinking through some of the cultural aspects of the business, I suppose. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. And yes, culture and building that culture across the organization, hugely important for any leader. So what I want to dive into first is how you got to sort of where you are as a leader. Now, I know you started at Culture Amp and you had a few different roles there. Tell us a little about how that evolved and how you ended up at EQL in the end.
Yeah, so it's interesting, I guess. Like my first leadership role really was, I started a company when I was in my 20s, and I grew that company, and I had people who reported to me in a manner of speaking in that company. And so that was my first experience of leadership, but I had no formal understanding of what that meant because I'd never reported to anybody. I had never had a manager or really worked in the real job. And so I sort of fell into that. It was a leadership role, but very different from the ones I've had since. My first formal management job was I think I'd been at Culture Amp for about 6 or 8 months, and I was tapped on the shoulder to start taking on leadership responsibilities. And yeah, so I did that. It was mainly because I guess Culture Amp was growing so quickly at the time that they needed people. Even though I was a first-time manager, they needed people to step into leadership roles. So that was kind of, and that's how I got drafted into it. I don't think I had particular. I've got somebody trying to deliver a parcel. I'm just going to ignore it. So I got drafted into that role without really putting my hand up for it, because they needed people in this growth environment.
Awesome. All right. Now I hear that our connection is maybe a little bit choppy, but the good thing is we are recording this, and we are recording it slightly better than the current stream. So if you're missing anything, there should be a chance to catch up on it after, and it should be okay. Alrighty. Now let's talk a little bit about more sort of that leadership transition, that initial one. What do you think made your manager or your new manager at the time pick you as a leader for your first assignment? What did you feel like you're bringing to the table already for that to be sort of a no-brainer or a logical step to pick you?
I think that product management is a sort of natural leadership role, in a sense. Like, you have to build, you have to build teams. You have to be able to influence and motivate and communicate effectively. It looks like we've lost Benjamin. And so I guess, I'd had to demonstrate some of the skills that are required as a leader in some way in my product management role. And I think that then, I don't know, I guess I was left to, not left, I wasn't left to figure it out on my own, but I certainly felt like there was a gap between what I understood leadership to be and what the company expected of me at that moment. So I thought that was kind of, that was a bit of an interesting start to the experience of being a leader. You're back, Benjamin.
Yes. Apologies. I think
I was going to have to do jokes.
Yeah. Well, good that it wasn't me having to do jokes as a German. That would not have been fun for anyone. But yeah, I think I've sorted out the connection issues. The joys of doing things live. All right. Now, I completely missed your answer, but I'm just going to assume that I got everything, and I was nodding away all the time. But we've got a plan for a session, so let's move on. And I hope it was valuable for the audience. No doubt, in fact. Okay. So. What did you feel like you were doing well in sort of your early leadership journey? So you got picked for particular reasons. You started the job, and every leader gets lots of feedback from up and down and sideways. What did you do well? And then we'll talk a little bit about what were the things that didn't work so well as well after.
That's a good question. So I suppose my natural inclination is to be pretty transparent with people about what I think is going on in a business, what's going on for me, what I think is going on for them, and try to have open conversations. And I think that is a pretty natural way of building trust with people who report to you. So even though I didn't have I didn't have formal skills, and I hadn't read any management books, and I'd really only had a manager myself for some number of months at that point. I think my kind of natural instinct to try and puzzle through problems together and sort of be open about what I think is going on was really helpful. And I think I'm the kind of person who always obviously wants to put other people first. I'm not an ambitious person in terms of title or kind of experience, and I think that lack of ambition is helps build trust. I want to do stuff that is good and fun and makes a positive impact in the world. So people realize that if I'm managing them, I'm trying to do it in their service rather than in the service of my own kind of fiefdom building or whatever it is that is the cliche of leadership, maybe.
Well, it's fascinating, right? Like all the books and all the research that's out there, on, servant leadership and being vulnerable as a leader, like show the positive impact on that. And yet somehow capitalism means a lot of leaders who are just looking after themselves do get, often promoted into leadership roles and very high leadership roles as well, and just don't put that priority on it. And you can always feel it in the teams that are miserable under them, and it shows to a degree in the company performance as well. But those leaders are very good at storytelling and making themselves shine. See,
Yeah.
making themselves look good in the light. Now, there's a different saying that my brain is just messing up. People who've joined a few times know that my voice is different. I'm sick right now, so bear with me. I'll figure it out. Okay, so that vulnerability and that trust and that being transparent, really, really good. Did that ever lead to issues as well, or were there sort of other mistakes that you felt like you made, early on, that if you could go
Yeah.
back, differently?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that uh, firstly, I definitely made countless mistakes as a leader early in my career when I didn't even know that's what I was doing, and
Mm,
I think, like, I'm sure that I just, just really it through being kind of blind to the bigger world. I just probably put my foot wrong a lot.
mm,
But I don't actually have kind of specific. I mean, I certainly have moments where I think, oh, that could have gone better. But the first really, like, the first decision that I made, that I really regretted, was being transparent about my intention to promote somebody.
mm,
And then in the process of going through the performance evaluation and then speaking to other leaders in the business, it turned out that other people didn't feel that this person was ready, that they'd had some relationship challenges in the business,
mm,
and that I got a fair bit of pushback about the idea of promoting them. Their skills were great, but maybe their relationship management was not as strong, and so I had to, it was not in my interests or their interests to promote them at that moment, and I had to
yeah,
go back to them and, say, I'm sorry, like, I've made a mistake here, and it's not going to happen this time around, and these are the things we should work through together to get you into the position where you can be promoted in future. But I
yeah.
really strongly regret, like, I would only give anybody a strong indication of the possibility of promotion now if I felt it was like a 99% likelihood that it would happen, because I think that the up and down there was, really bad for both of us in that situation.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it it prepared you for a lot of conversations about promotions in the future, I assume, because the learning coming from that, yeah, would have been intense, but actually incredibly valuable, right? In terms of, all right, well, actually, here's now that the steps that I need to check beforehand, when I next time I promote someone. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and maybe another mistake, which is a sort of middle management mistake, maybe, is
Mm,
I've been in positions where have not. I feel like I've not done enough to kind of really understand what my bosses needed from me, and
mm,
sent people, you know, who reported to me off on the wrong path. And I think that
yeah.
is really, that's a really hard thing to kind of extract yourself from as well, because you do a lot. I mean, I try to do a lot to motivate people to work on the things that they're working on and deliver the results that they're working on. And when those results don't line up with what the company cares about, that's really demoralizing. And so I think there have been moments where I've, you know, sort of sent people off on a tangent and had to backpedal out of that,
Yeah.
which, again, probably an easy mistake to make, but I certainly really try to avoid it now if I can.
Yeah, I mean it's such a common one, especially in startups and scale ups and in an innovation environment that thrives on ideas and enthusiasm and trying things and new ideas that maybe don't seem to fit perfectly into things right now, but are like potentially, there's a huge opportunity behind them. So it's yeah, I think it's such a common one. But it sounds like, and there we are on our sort of topic for the day. You've done in all of those mistakes, and even in all of those successes, a huge amount of reflection, and sort of gain more self-awareness of yourself and what you stand for, and where you want to be as a leader, through the exercise. And I know we talked a little bit about how important that is as a leader, and also how important that is to instill in your team. So how do you approach that process?
So we're right in the middle of our performance evaluation process at Equal, and it's the first time we're doing a formal process. It's a new company, and we've done a sort of ad hoc thing in the past, but now we're doing it properly for the first time. And one thing that I really try to make a central part of that process is for the people who report to me to write really detailed self-evaluations or self-reflections where they share how they think they're going, what has been successful, what they've felt that they've struggled with, and really I really encourage them to put as much into that process as possible, because I think that is the thing that gives me the most information as a manager about where they are at, and particularly kind of overall gives me a sense of their ability to reflect on their own experiences and grow from them. And so I think that is the starting point for me, is find a way to understand how self-reflective the people who I work with are, and then try to find ways of enabling them to open up and look inward a bit more effectively, and use that to kind of drive their progression. I think that I guess I have a lot of empathy for people who are not super kind of ambitious or goal oriented, because I'm not one of those people. I like to work on challenging problems and be impactful. But I think with good self-reflection, you can find your way to the problems that you care about more effectively than if you just sort of blunder around and don't have those good tools.
Yeah. It makes so much sense. Like in many ways, this is your feedback loop, right? And it's critical for any skill that you want to learn, that you have those feedback loops. And it's actually something that as part of the Scalable Leaders program and support system, we do a lot, where one of the core pillars is we have those sandbox sessions where people can do role play and do case studies and just play with different leadership tools, and sort of have those feedback loops and go as individuals, and in with peers who are not colleagues but sort of at a similar stage in their career, go through that reflection process and understand how different things pan out, and what they can learn from it, and what they can learn from other people's experiences, so that they can bypass a lot of the mistakes, and so that's complemented with a 24/7 peer support community. And sorry, we just had someone entering our studio, which I need to take care of. And of course, the insights from leaders who have been at Google, at Atlassian, at Culture Amp, at Sentinel, and so forth. And so we're trying to make this really the fastest way for leaders to level up in tech. Now, if anyone's interested and sort of feels like they have troubles as a leader, then you can go to scalableLeaders.com/call and schedule 45 minutes with me to look at your issue, at your challenges, and see what solutions we can find for you. It's completely free, no strings attached. Now, back to you, Virginia. The mistakes and sort of the reflection, that's really critical. But each leader has to make really hard decisions, where no amount of reflection that you do sort of makes you feel happy about having to make that decision, or with the way you have to make the call. Tell us about the hardest decision you've had to make, and how it panned out.
I'm sure for most leaders, it comes down to the decision to let somebody go, or to restructure somebody's role, or to put somebody on performance management. Like, all of those are similar in the fact that they are, I guess, they are decisions that you agonize over that ultimately have a much bigger impact on somebody else's life. And so for me, the moment that I'm taking somebody else's life into my own hands is like, I take that incredibly seriously, and I find it very, very agonizing, particularly because those processes turn what should be a positive growth relationship into something that is adversarial and nitpicky, and very rarely actually produces positive results for anybody. So there have been a handful of those in my career, and I haven't enjoyed any of them. And I mean, really, at this point, my whole life is about trying to make sure that doesn't have to happen, because that I think good management to some extent can prevent you from getting into those fixes. But then also, in this universe of startups, you are a bit at the mercy of the money, and so I'm always aware that is a future risk to manage.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to. You're right. There's like two different ways of parting ways, right? One is there's a commercial decision we have to downsize, and I've had to do that multiple times, where I had to shut whole teams down, and that's never fun for everyone, for anyone. It's a little bit easier when it's just your company and the rest of the market is fine. It's a lot harder when suddenly the whole market is out, and you realize that it might be a lot harder for those people to find roles, even if they're great. But then there's the other kind, where it's performance related, or you just don't glue together. And I always found one of the most helpful ways of sort of framing that is that, they're great people, they're just in the wrong role, or you're not the right manager for them. And I've always been very transparent when I felt like, actually, I've got an incredible person here, but I don't feel like I'm a great manager for them. And I feel like it would be unfair for me to assume that everything is fine, and to just like for them to be miserable, and rather set them free. Hasn't always been received very well. Some people felt like I should try harder to shift my leadership style and how I work as a person to them. And but if you try to do that as a leader for everyone in your team, whether it's 5, 10 people, or 10 people, or more, it's impossible to actually do your role as a leader as well. So yeah, but you're right. It's always a hard one, and most leaders would say the call to let someone go for whatever reason is the most difficult thing.
Yeah.
Alrighty, now let's go to you as a leader today. Every leader has their strengths and the things that they want to stand for, and also lots of things that they're like, yeah, all right, that's one of my weaknesses. Pretty open about it. That's just how I come. Who's Virginia as a leader in terms of the good and the bad?
So this is where my self-reflection skills kind of come into their own, I guess. If there's anybody on the call who has reported to me, they might be able to jump in the comments and say whether I'm right or wrong. I think I have a reputation for being a little bit scary, which I don't love. Like, I try not to. I think that I try to be very fair and direct, but I can also have this sense of urgency and intensity that people can find a bit overwhelming at times. So I think sometimes when I am trying to help somebody find their way with a difficult problem, I've got a bit of a habit of overwhelming them with ideas and opinions and kind of ways to solve the problem. And it's something that I have to be really careful about, because I think that, people have to solve problems in their own way, and me giving them all of my ways doesn't necessarily help get them there. I write a ton. I think people, particularly people who work with me now, would say that I just write thousands of words every week about the things that are on my mind. I really find writing is the best way for me to kind of clarify my own opinions and to communicate with people in the business about what I care about and what I think is important. And I think that, I'm very not a deck person, and I'm trying not to create new deck people in the world. I want to be, I think detail and argument and kind of nuance is really, really, really important in product management. And so I try to demonstrate that in my work. And I guess I think that my teams would understand how much I kind of go into bat for them and care for them as people. I think that I really do my best to make sure that people understand that work is how we entertain ourselves during the day and how we make sure that we have food and clothing. And I would never work in a job where I wasn't really engaged and really excited to solve the problems that are at hand. But at the same time, I need to be able to disconnect, and my team needs to be able to disconnect and go and live the lives that we're earning the money to support. So that I really try hard to strike that balance with my team. Just startups will take everything you have. So how can I help people to kind of patrol those boundaries effectively, and give what they can rather than allow the job to take everything that they have. I think that's. I hope people know that I care about that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually fascinating how you need that, like, a little bit of intensity to make sure there is clarity and there's urgency and things moving. But if you balance that with showing that deep care for your team, I think you're doing all right as a leader in sort of balancing both as I say, the grit of just getting things done and the glue and just making sure that things are harmonious. You reminded me of something I used to tell my teams pre-COVID, which was, well, if this was easy, none of us would be here, because we would, just naturally as people, as problem solvers in tech, would choose to do something that was more challenging and that would engage us a little bit more as a problem. So there's no complaining that certain things are hard. I did have the feeling that sort of post-COVID that changed a little bit, and a lot of people are maybe dialing back how much they engage in work, and like there's so many other worries of just the change we all had to go through in COVID, and then a lot of people opting to work from home to bring sort of the stress levels down a little bit, and still now cost of living crisis and Australia housing, etc. It's all rather difficult, and so I feel like there is the attitude to work is very quickly changing. Have you noticed that in your teams as well? And if so, like, how did you sort of adapt as a leader to still get a lot out of your teams while not burning them out or having them leave to greener shores?
Yeah, I think it feels still really challenging to me. I think 2021 was the hardest year of work that I've done. It was so incredibly draining and stressful working online all day, every day, and not connecting in person and getting that, whatever intangible thing you get out of connecting with humans face to face, not getting any of that, and just the kind of like grind of work I found really challenging. And I think that probably the next generation of leaders will be much more equipped to handle that and live like that than I am now. I still feel like it's a challenge. I try to bring people together. We at Equal, we have a couple of days in the office a week, and I get a lot of energy from that, and I hope that my team does. I think that I'm very sort of accepting of people who don't find being in the office energizing, and we try to create situations where we can have a hybrid of people in person and online. It still feels awkward to me to do that. I don't know what the solution is there. I thought Atlassian's stuff that they published a few weeks ago about the kind of right cadence for bringing people together in person in a largely remote world was really interesting. And I thought, it's sort of, I guess, accorded with my view, which is people are most productive when they're working at home, but but to get to the level of clarity about what they're doing and why they're doing it so that they're productive on the right things, I think still requires a certain kind of presence and connection that I find hard to generate online. I don't think it's impossible, but for me, it's just not my natural state.
Yeah, I mean, I've followed a lot of companies that went fully remote even before COVID, and the key insight from them is just the act of bringing people together and forming that human connection and building that social fabric. It still work, right? And what in-person companies try to do a lot is like, oh, after work, let's go for drinks. And well, because it's sort of convenient, you might get there, but actually it is very much still work, even though it's just drinks, and you're engaging socially. And so bringing people together once a quarter or once a year at least over, like at a different destination where you not exactly recharge, but you get inspired by a new destination and you form that social fabric, and that's the focus of that time is incredibly important, even for those fully remote companies. And just treating people as not just transactions is a key thinking of that. And the savings of not having an office can go into flying everyone into one location. Hybrid is the one I've seen as, I think, like yourself, as the hardest solution. And the problem there is just leveling the playing field between the people that are remote and the people that are in person. And the best advice I've seen on that is well, if one person is remote, everyone joins the meeting remote. It's just that most office spaces aren't set up for that, right? Suddenly everyone is having meetings in a public space, and just everyone has all this background noise, and the microphones and the machines aren't good enough yet at filtering all that out. So there's still some way for us to go to make that work. Oh well. All right, so let's go. We've got a couple of questions online, and this is awesome. And if I can just say, Oliver, can you reframe your question? Because I know you asked it at the beginning, and by itself, I'm not sure I fully get that yet, but I want to get around to it. So first, I want to sort of wrap it up here. My set of questions for Virginia with the question around just leadership and how you manage yourself, right? Leadership is a very stressful role, and I think, with the hangover and with like all the changes that we're still going through, you constantly need to adapt, and that learning and that changing your own style and approach, that's also inherently stressful. How do you make sure you stay sane and you're in a good place to actually lead your team and to make good decisions as a leader?
It's really hard. I think that I'm old now, and I have a certain amount of work stamina that I accept that people don't have when they're starting out working. So I have a very high tolerance for long work days and, juggling a lot of moving pieces and, different types of communication and etc. Like I just have developed that stamina, for want of the better word, over time. I also have had moments, 2021, I was incredibly stressed and I didn't manage it well. And I look back on that time and think, I don't know why I was unable to extract myself or even really recognize that what I was going through was this kind of like very high level of stress. And I think now I would recognize the symptoms better. Like I know now if my heart rate is up, I probably need to ask myself why that is and whether I need to react to that or change something about what I'm doing, or, I think I'm better at recognizing those symptoms. If work stress is keeping me awake, I listen to Headspace sleep stories, or I take a sleeping pill or something to just like snap myself out of that, because sleep is super important. And I get up every day at 5:30 and I go and do exercise, and that is the most old person thing to say on earth. And nobody imagines themselves doing that when they're in their 20s. They think it's like, you're crazy. But that is the thing that makes it possible for me to kind of do everything else, I guess. just have some routines that I stick to, and then use my kind of experience to be flexible and adaptable depending on the demands of the job.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, yeah, sleep and exercise, right? It's like it's very simple, but at the same time, it's funny how often we as humans struggle these days to get that right. The last question from my side is just, what's the best advice you've got for emerging leaders, the ones that still want to make that jump into leadership, or sort of have made recently but are still figuring it out?
Like, you've got to look inside and figure out why you want to do this. And if the answer is because this is the way that I can get more money, that's probably not going to serve you. I really don't. I just don't think that. I think that particularly in tech companies now, there are more paths for advancement for people who are not actually passionate about leadership, and or who are not equipped for leadership for whatever reason. And I think if you really are seeking leadership roles because you think that is the way to advance in your job, you're going to bring so much stress and anxiety and like conflict upon yourself with very little. I struggle to see what the rewards of that would be other than the financial rewards. Obviously, I don't know, it's a luxury to be able to hold that position in some respects, but I don't think that taking on management because make more money is a good idea, and I don't think that management or leadership positions because you think you would be good at bossing people around is a good idea either. Like, I think people should. The best leaders to me seem to be to me particularly now, like, are the ones who have very great craft skills, and I think great practitioners who learn the skill of kind of teaching and supporting people around them are tend to be really terrific managers, and people who are seeking glory, not so much in my experience. So product management is a bit suspect because, like, you're not useful as a product manager if you won't take on leadership responsibility, so PM's a little bit different but as an engineer, I would way prefer to type code than talk to people about typing code.
No, that's fascinating. I've always maintained this view that yes, product is a leadership role, even if nobody reports to you. And I think we're still gaining awareness of that in Australia, and how much more the product role could add value if we just enabled it right. Which I had a very innocent post the other day, and it just got a lot of responses, a lot of people pinging. It's like, oh man, I'm glad someone said it like that. So yeah, we've got some way to go. But yeah, the other thing you've mentioned, I mean, I see, especially right now, a lot of people who are thinking about leadership as a way of solving the cost of living crisis. And it's I can follow the thought process. It's just if that's the only thing driving you that way, it's probably going to be really, really difficult. And the stress you're experiencing is just going to get amplified because suddenly, as a manager, you think you can tell people what to do, but actually your team is constantly telling you what they now expect of you, and you've got other leaders who are probably a few steps ahead of you as well to tell you what they expect, and then the leadership chain above you. So it's an influx and multiplication of expectations that is a surprise to many people making that jump. And the thing I found is in tech in particular, a lot of people try to hack it actually by leading through expertise and craft. We see this in engineering all the time, right? The most senior engineer gets promoted because, well, you seem to know what you're doing. Now you just tell the team. And if you lean on that as a crutch and you forget about the people management part and the interpersonal skills and the motivation and influencing, etc., then it's a very short-sighted approach to leadership to just think, I know best, so now I tell people and I forget about everything else that makes humans human.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating. All right, now we've got a couple of questions from the audience. Let's get around to them. The first one, David Johnson, wondering, focused on product management. How do you encourage that sense of ownership in your team members for product?
Yeah, talking to customers, I think, is the only way to really foster it. Like I think that the product management mistake that is very easy for product leaders to make is telling people to build stuff rather than having them discover for themselves that they should build stuff. And so the only way you get that sense of ownership and and momentum behind ideas and customer needs is to talk to customers. I think then probably combining that customer centricity with making sure that all the product managers in my team have a strong understanding of the business, like how the business works, what kinds of customers we are trying to attract, what those customers have in common, what their needs are, and sort of what our business goals are. Those two things go together to create ownership, I think. I think then the big challenge that I see with product managers is how to help them instill a sense of ownership in their teams, because it's one thing for me to do it from my position of leadership in the business with a wide view of what's going on. I think product managers generally find it difficult to then get a team of engineers to buy into the stuff that they're building, or to have a strong sense of awareness about why it is that they should work on this thing and not that thing, or why this feature is important to the business and this one isn't.
Yeah,
but it is hard work.
It's interesting, right? I found with a lot of, especially the junior and mid-level PMs, the way we put the emphasis for product management in recent years is that you need to be a champion of the user and the customer, and that is really important. And while I agree it is, the flip side of that equation hasn't received so much attention in terms of, well, what is actually viable for the business and how do the dynamics of the business work so we make a call not just for the user but for the business overall. And I feel like a lot of PMs are sort of falling short there on their commercial thinking, that ultimately leaves them ill-equipped to handle themselves and sort of carry that on in a conversation with sales and with marketing, with a commercial thinking, and like how well-rounded they are in their communication is a little bit more up there, and so it leaves us in a spot where where ultimately we just get given features again to implement, and neither the customer nor the commercial focus sort of get the position it deserved in the whole conversation. So yeah, we've got some room to grow as a function. Do you find the customer focus is a little bit easier than the commercial focus in your teams as well?
I think I'm really impressed by the way the product managers in my team take on board both things. I think one really nice thing about being a 50-person startup is that there are really strong personal relationships between customer success and marketing and sales and product, and that really drives like strong empathy for a product manager wondering how a salesperson is going to demo this feature and tell that story. Like I think that there is a lot of that business awareness just sort of naturally, because we're small and because we are seeking still, we have this narrow product market fit, and we are seeking, other problems to solve that make sense, that complement that, feature or that part of our product. And I think the product managers largely think about that stuff really well and are really trying to connect the dots about how the business works with how the product, what we should invest in the product.
Awesome. I must say, I think you're not giving yourself or maybe the company enough credit in terms of the culture that exists there, because I actually think it doesn't just come down to size. I've seen a company just like it around that size where the gap between product and sales couldn't have been larger. And in fact, when I asked, it's like, hey, I'd love to see how you guys sell this thing. I was sort of, like looked at very, very suspiciously. It's like, why would I ever want to join a sales conversation? And if I do, then please don't say anything. Don't mess our relationship up with the customer. It was almost antagonistic. Like, look, product people don't do what we say, and so therefore we sort of don't like keeping them too close. So yeah, again, kudos to the culture you've instilled and you've got it at EQL. Then
I would love to know how the customer success and salespeople at Equal sort of describe this, but from my perspective, I see product managers being welcomed into sales calls and into conversations with our existing customers and being given a lot of freedom to explore and share their opinions and ask questions, and that I'm pretty sure that everybody feels like that strengthens the relationship that we have with our customers.
absolutely.
And that it's really nice for that the good cop bad cop of the product person and the salesperson can be a really great dynamic, because you can the salesperson can tell a big story, and then a product person can build trust by pointing to parts of that story that may not fit the customer's needs, but we will help you get there, kind of thing. Like I think that actually is a good shape of conversation to have.
Yeah, awesome. And I couldn't agree more with that relationship. And I love seeing it. And in fact, at Atlassian, it was similar, where actually all the engineers were also keen to get in front of customers. And the faster you can on the shortest path without the Chinese whispers in between, you can get from inside of what the customer says and what they want to the people who are building the product. The better you make decisions, or the more, like, the purer is the data that you make decisions on as a product person and even as an engineer. But yeah, not all companies look at it like that, and it's I think it's a shame for the product function, but also for us as an ecosystem as a whole. We would build much more commercially aware people if that relationship was closer, because let's face it, there is actually a ton that us in product and sales can learn from sales and their approach as well, not just from the customer, but just from how the business works and how the dynamics between what we build and how other people take it to market works. So I'm a big fan of strengthening that relationship. Now, there's a little bit more time, so if anyone still has questions, chuck them in there. But we did have a question from Oliver as well, which I think he asked at the very beginning, when it came to you moving into leadership and sort of making that transition, and sort of the gap in skills. What did you, in hindsight now, what did you think that gap looked like, or what you had to really work on, and what skills to hone?
I think the ability to kind of confidently assess somebody else's performance and then describe what I saw in a way that was, open to them having a different opinion and working through it. I found that a really, really hard kind of gap to close. I had not had much experience with managers giving me really useful, actionable, direct feedback or assessing my performance. And so that was definitely something, those conversations were really taxing to begin with. And I had to really make a big effort to figure out how I would approach doing that. And I think the other gap was maybe, going from being a PM, where you are sort of, it's a leadership role and you are in with the team against the world in some respect. I mean, that can be the dynamic a little bit, to having to represent the needs of the business and balance those with the needs of the team. I think there were moments where I found that gap hard to close as well. Just like this team has a plan that seems like, in isolation, seems like a perfectly reasonable and coherent plan, but it's not one that serves the needs of the business right now, and how to help turn that view around. I don't think I could have even described that challenge effectively when I was first encountering it. And now I can spot it and do something about it, maybe. But it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was having this conversation today about how even though we say product managers need to be leaders, the step into actually formally managing people is still a step up, and just so many skills you need to build up that just you didn't need before. And for engineers and designers in particular, it's a real career pivot. While at the same time, you still have to, so you have to learn about leadership, but you also still have to maintain your core craft a little bit as engineers, designers in particular, and then as product managers. I mean, the learning literally never stops, right? We're learning about engineering and design and the business, and then leadership on top. So it's yeah, you need a lot of headspace for that. That brings us in many ways to our next question from Mark here, who picked up on sort of local PMs over-indexing a little bit on user centricity and not enough on business viability, and sort of wonders if that is a gap just left by product designers and UX not stepping up enough and playing that role a lot, so that we sort of have to step in there and therefore lose sight on the commercial side a little bit. What do you reckon?
That's a good question. I think like teams, I think every team, every sort of, if you think about it, cross-functional empowered product team, shape of team, every team ends up like looking a little bit differently different in the responsibilities that each member of that team plays. And the thing that I really watch out for are teams where the product manager feels too much of a sense of responsibility for the kind of design of the feature or the implementation or the execution of the development work, and they don't step out enough to get the bigger picture and get the sort of broader business view. And so I guess that it is possible that sometimes that happens in cases where they're not getting enough from the product designer. But I think I've generally more seen the problem of the product manager being a little bit scared to reach up into stuff that they don't know, and therefore going where it is safe, like where there are things you can touch, concrete things you can like poke at, and then them kind of inadvertently making it difficult for the designers or the engineers to do their jobs by meddling in stuff that is kind of concrete and easy to understand, rather than trying to figure out the much more abstract, complicated, what do our customers need? What does our business need? Et cetera. Like, I don't sound incredibly judgmental of product managers. I'm very hard on product managers, but I think it is a very, very hard job, and that is a hard transition to make for PMs, particularly if they come up with the expectation that their job involves things like backlog grooming, which is just such a cursed concept that I hesitate to say the words out loud.
Yes, do not speak its name. Yeah, it's fascinating. I wonder how that translates into sort of this sudden new wave of thinking of, do we even need PMs, right? And companies like Airbnb and Dovetail locally, both founded by designers coincidentally, but thinking, well, actually we should give a lot more power to the designers, and the product managers in the current shape and form those companies had them weren't adding proportional value, and sort of starting to do a bit of a shift of roles and responsibilities. And I guess that's what it just comes down to, the question from Mark as well, right? Is there just companies that, where the roles and responsibilities and the org design itself is just under optimized because we're not realizing the optimal division of tasks and work and expertise and what that could be, and therefore how we should build expertise in companies. But there I see Airbnb and Dovetail that the onus almost shifts to put the commercial thinking now on the designers as well, and to have them focus on the users, and product in whatever remains of it being more focused on delivery and communicating whatever value gets delivered to the customers or to the market at large. Do you have a take on that model? before we wrap it up for the day?
I think my take is that there's, product management can be a hindrance rather than a help if not performed in the right way. And I can see why, in the same way the middle management can be a hindrance, not a help, and why companies who are downsizing choose to cut from those ranks first, because it's, really easy to see how you could go on making money without those people coming to work every day. Just, put very bluntly. And I think that it is on product managers, very firmly on product managers, to demonstrate their value in the business by generating real insight and producing decisions. And I love the idea of designers being more empowered to make the kind of day-to-day, not just empowered, but kind of expected or accountable for the day-to-day kind of change of the product, the experience of using the product, and for the connection with customers. But I also think you can't do everything, and you need people in a business who are strategic and who are going to try to join together the business and the customer needs. And that's what product managers should do. And if they're not doing that, I have to find a way to get them there. That's the otherwise, there is limited value in the role.
Yeah, awesome. All righty, that pretty much wraps it up from our side. But I know, Virginia, thank you so much for sharing so many insights today. It's been a real pleasure, and we covered a lot more ground, I think, than we expected at the beginning. But how can the community help you? Is there anything on your mind that your team needs right now?
Good question. I always love hearing from people who have product management challenges, and I love to jam. I think generally, EQL at the moment has an open role for an account exec in the US. And if you know anybody who is looking to work with a startup which has a great culture and a really exciting future ahead of it, hit me up in my DMs. I'm really happy to extol the virtues of working at EQL, and I will be working closely with whoever this person is. So I'm looking to be introduced to your friends. Send me account execs.
Awesome. And I think a real draw card, if you've already mentioned a few times as well, is that just that tight relationship between the sales side and the product side, which I think a lot of account executives would be quite surprised by. So that's awesome. All righty. Now, we've covered so much ground today, and I hope it helped a bunch of people in the audience. And I'd like to thank everyone for showing up. Just your curiosity of engaging in the journey of mastering leadership is just an asset to the ecosystem, right? And we're all going to be stronger if we have more better leaders that are empathetic, trying to do the right things by their people, but also achieve goals and lift our ecosystem here in ANZ up. The next fireside chat is with Lauren McCormack from Zip, who's the Chief Product Officer there. That's next Tuesday, same time. I'd say same place, as in it's on LinkedIn, but it's going to be a different link. I'll put the link to event in the comments, and I'd love to see a bunch of people there. And if you're here and you've got any challenges, or you're looking to grow, or you're wondering how to get into leadership, reach out and head to scalableaders.com/call and let's get together and discuss your challenges and where you want to go, and work out a strategy for how you can get there. It's free and no strings attached. That's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up, for spending your lunch break with us. And I hope to see most of you at the call next week. Cheers, everybody.